Please, Aaron Spence.
This isn't the start of my talk, but I actually formatted my talk for a typical screen, which is 1024 and come here to B&H, which it was silly of me because here at B&H everything's 1080p, so I've just been reformatting all of my visuals for 1080p. Some of the websites won't have loaded up the full version, so we're going to show a small version because our internet is quite slow up here. So g'day everyone, my name is Aaron Spence and I'm a panaholic. It's been 24 hours. It's been 24 hours since I last took a shot, and it'll be probably less than 24 hours before I do another one. Now, if this was a Panaholics Anonymous meeting for real, this place where this is being held would be probably the worst place on the earth to hold a Panaholics meeting for someone who is trying to quit. It could not be in a worse place for a Panaholic. But fortunately, I'm a Pano freak, so I'm not actually trying to quit. Well, worse luck for my wife, but I'm not trying to quit, and I suspect most of you guys are not trying to quit either. And what that does is make this place the most amazing place on the face of the earth for the next 3 or 4 days for anyone who is a Pano freak. I mean, we're in Manhattan, one of the most iconic and amazing cities on the face of the earth. We're in B&H, the world's largest, I believe, camera photographic video store, and one that's already swallowed over $500 of my cash, and I'm sure there's more to come. Absolutely fantastic place, and we're in here in a room with some of the world's most amazing, fantastic, and incredible panorama photographers. So if there was a, let me say that again. There's no better place on the face of the earth for panorama photographers for the next 3 or 4 days than right here. So I'm excited. The lineup that the guys have put together is brilliant. The speakers are amazing. There's a lot of friends I've got here and new friends I'll meet, and yeah, it's going to be brilliant. I'm honoured to be here, honoured to speak with you guys. And I'll stop with the blurb now and start on Kaplan Seaview survey. It's a project that I've been working on for about 6 or 8 months, and over the next hour or so I'll run you through what it is, how I became involved in it, and the different things that we've been doing to date. It's by no stretch of the imagination finished, and in fact it's hardly even begun. But before we go into all of that, let me just find, oh, I've already lost what I needed. Half a second. There we go. So my talk involves video, panoramas, still images, Google Earth, and all the rest of it. So I'm actually just moving through all the different applications rather than trying to bring all of that stuff into PowerPoint or whatever, because it's just not possible. So what we'll do to start off with is have a quick look at Kaplan Seaview survey, a bit of an overview of what it is all about.
The Great Barrier Reef, one of the 7 wonders of the natural world, is the focus of the 2012 Kaplan Seaview survey. Working with some of the best coral reef scientists and using pioneering new technologies to reveal our oceans, the Kaplan Seaview survey aims to undertake the first comprehensive scientific study to document the composition and health of this extraordinary reef system to a depth of 100 meters. The Great Barrier Reef is an important indicator of how healthy our oceans are. The survey will be laying down some important baselines for understanding how change is occurring and what the future may hold for the oceans in general.
When it comes to climate change, we know 100 times more about how life on land is going to respond than life in the sea. And this is really one of the core contributions of this project. This is really important right now. The Kaplan Seaview survey is going to focus on an important part of the Great Barrier Reef, and it's going to provide some really important information on the structure and the biology of the reef. A central component of this part of the survey will be a custom-made underwater vehicle which will be able to take rapid-fire 360-degree shots of the Great Barrier Reef. This is going to provide really crucial information on the structure of the reef, the life as it is today, which forms a very important baseline which we have to have if we're going to understand climate change and its effects on reef systems. The Deep Reef Survey will be visiting parts of the Great Barrier Reef which is rarely visited by science. Using robots and instrumentation packages, we'll be making some of the first measurements on this important but unseen part of the Great Barrier Reef. The Megafauna Survey will provide important information on the movements of tiger sharks, manta rays and green turtles. And these are actually parts of the biology of the Great Barrier Reef which we suspect are being impacted by climate change, but we know very little about.
What we at Catlin do is sponsor scientific research to enable us to better understand our future, both for ourselves, our children and our grandchildren.
Alongside collecting new scientific data, the Catlin Seaview survey endeavours to bring the results to millions of people globally. The pioneering technology developed for the expedition allows people sitting at home to take a dive onto the Great Barrier Reef, and for the first time make the underwater world accessible to everyone in a way that has never been experienced before. Working in collaboration with Google's YouTube, Google+, and Panoramio channels will also help bridge the gap between scientific knowledge and public awareness. The Catlin Seaview survey begins in September 2012.
Okay, so that's the bit of an overview of what the project is about. And the project has got 4 main partners at this point in time. And I'll have some lights, if there's some lights in the house. If I can see what I'm reading here. So there's 4 main, thank you, there's 4 main partners on the project. There's Underwater Earth, who's the guys who I'm directly working with. It was their idea and they managed to pull it all together between Catlin and the other partners. There's the University of Queensland, which is just near the nearest university to the Great Barrier Reef, really. So they've got all sorts of departments that are involved in research into coral and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of scientists involved, and the guy up there is the heading up the scientific part of the survey. There's a small company you may not have heard of that's doing some of the distribution, that's Google. And then there's Catlin, who are the sponsors of the project. Now, the interesting thing about Catlin, well, what they are is they're a multinational insurance company, and their tagline is underwriting ambition. The interesting thing about Catlin is that rather than spend all of their marketing budget on traditional advertising, print media and web and video, they spend, I'm not sure what percentage, they spend a large amount of their marketing budget on sponsoring scientific projects that are helpful to all mankind, and this is one of them. The previous project to this was called the Catlin Arctic Survey, so that for about 2 years they had teams of people up there studying all sorts of stuff, and I'm not going to pretend to have a clue what they were studying, but it was all scientific research up there in the Arctic. And then late in 2011, so late last year, the Catlin Seaview survey got the nod, and they've, because the Arctic project was finished, and moved on to the Seaview survey. I mean, I can see why the Catlin Seaview survey did get the nod, because the previous one being in the Arctic, you can imagine the talk around the office. The company trip to the Arctic was fun, but do you reckon for the next one we could do something a little more tropical island? And so that's what it ended up with. The Catlin Seaview survey is tropical islands of the Great Barrier Reef, so I'm sure the guys around the office at Catlin are happy about that. Not that it would have had anything to do with it. But that's Catlin, so they're sponsoring the whole project and doing a great job of that. So where is the project occurring? Great Barrier Reef. Has anyone heard of the Great Barrier Reef before? Yeah? Does anyone know where it is?
Yeah.
Good. It's a long, long way from here, just in case you weren't aware. This is where we are at B&H. I just want to show you where it is, because it is a very, very long way. This is obviously B&H where we are right now, so if you wave, you'll see yourself in the window there. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so this is where we are here at B&H, obviously Manhattan, and then the Great Barrier Reef is off the east coast of Australia, which is pretty well on the opposite end of the world from where we are here in New York. And it's up on the north-east coast of Australia. And it stretches for about 2,600 kilometres, which is 1,600 miles. I mean, all of that area that you can see there, this is all the Great Barrier Reef. All the way down, and even further right down here to Lady Elliot Island. We've been doing a lot of preparation and testing and that sort of thing on Heron Island, which is one of the islands, a coral cay on the Great Barrier Reef. That's it there. It's a little island, so it's you can walk around it in about half an hour. Half of it, this half here, is national park, and the other half is a resort and a large research station, which is a part of the University of Queensland. So that's a pretty good gig if you're living on this island and as a scientist doing research, which I spent some time with those guys. So that's Heron Island. Even Heron Island, as far as Australia is concerned, is fairly remote. It is to get to Heron, it's a 2-hour boat ride from Gladstone, which is a small town of about 50,000 people on the Australian coastline. So yeah, compared to, I just love the difference between Heron Island, tiny place, 2 hours ride in the middle of nowhere, and Manhattan. Just, it's phenomenal how far away that is from where we are right now. Anyway, so that's where it is. I'll read you a little bit about the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest coral reef system, composed of over 2,900 individual reefs and 900 islands stretching for over 2,600 kilometres, which is 1,600 miles, over an area of approximately 350,000 square kilometres, which is 133,000 square miles. The reef is located obviously in the Coral Sea off the coast of northeastern Australia. The Great Barrier Reef can be seen from outer space and is the world's largest single structure made by living organisms. The reef structure is composed of and built by billions of tiny organisms known as coral polyps. So that's the Great Barrier Reef, and it really is quite great. So putting all that together, the project, the partners, and everything we've been working on, in February of this year, on 23rd of February this year, the pilot program, or the very first version of what we're doing, just to prove that it could be done, was launched. And this is where our internet connection means I'm not being able to do it full screen. If I go full screen, our system loads up a bigger version, and the internet's really not quick enough to do that at the moment. So this was launched on the 23rd of February as a pilot, and this is on Heron Island. You can see over here on the map, this is Heron Island here, and just a few different panoramas shot in that area. I think some of these are cached, so we can have a quick look at this, or maybe not. It's been too long, and then it'll be cached. No, sorry about that. You can look at that stuff. It's just online, so that's available to see. And if anyone wants a link, I can shoot that through to you. So that's the pilot program that launched in Feb. Now, what I want to go back and do is tell you a little bit about how we got to that point and how we get to the point we are now. I want to go right back to the beginning, which is here. This is where it all began for me. I was born in it. No, I wasn't born here. I was actually photographing this church. This is in a little town called Picton, about 60 kilometres southwest of Sydney. I was photographing this church for a client, and notice there's some moray there. I'm glad I didn't shoot it with a D-hammer-D. Look at that. Anyway, I was photographing this church. The phone rings, and there's a guy called Christophe Balache on the phone. He's a Frenchman, and he says, "We've got this Seaview project where we want to photograph the reefs, and we're looking for someone to help us make it happen." Interestingly, I had heard of the project from another party, but I thought it was already happening and it was already done. But I found out on this phone call that wasn't the case. So I said what I always say to a client when I'm in the middle of a shoot: sounds like a fantastic project, I'd like to be involved. Send me an email, and when I'm back home, I'll get to you in a couple of days, and we can talk about it. And yeah, it sounds great. And he said, "Oh, you're not in Queensland," which is where I live. And I said, "No, I'm in Sydney right now on a shoot." And he said, "Oh, you're in Sydney right now." I said, "I could do a French accent." "No, I can't." "Oh, you're in Sydney?" Don't. So I should have practiced French accent, but I'd offend the French people here, so I won't do that. So he said, "You're in Sydney?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm in Sydney on a shoot." He said, "Oh, can we meet?" And I said, "Well, I'm on a shoot for the rest of today and into this evening. I'm staying down here, and then tomorrow." And he said, "What about tomorrow?" I said, "Tomorrow I've got 3 shoots for 3 different clients, and they start well before dawn, and they finish about an hour before I have to hop on the plane and fly home. This is Christoph. He's a fantastic guy. He's a documentary photographer, a videographer, and underwater guy, and he's very persistent. So he said, "Oh, we've got to meet." So I figured out that first I said, well, maybe there'll be half an hour at the airport before I fly out. We can meet at the airport. I said the last job I'm shooting is the Sydney Convention Centre in the afternoon. I said maybe. Oh, it's not loaded again either. It might load while we're talking. I said maybe while I'm shooting that we could meet in between the shoot. And so as it turns out, Thomas is going to see if we can get that loaded. You can see from the thumbnail it's beautiful. That little tiny thumbnail. Just think of that thumbnail as much, much bigger with a panorama spinning around and you'll get the feel for it. Well, anyway, so it's a convention centre. They're seating all over the place. There's a lot of different places. So I set up in an area that was sort of between the different places I had to shoot and had a very strange meeting where I would spend 5 minutes saying g'day, meeting them, they'd tell me about the project, then I'd go and shoot a room for 20 minutes and then I'd come back and we'd have another 5 or 10 minutes of talking and then I'd go and shoot somewhere else. So over the course of about 2 hours we had this very extremely disjointed meeting where they told me about the project and gave me the ideas of the things they were trying to do, and I talked to them about things that I was working on that may be in that sort of vein and gave them some ideas of what we could do. So we can't look at that at the moment, I'm sorry, at the convention centre. I mean, it's just a Sydney Convention Centre, so that's neither here nor there. So I leave the Sydney Convention Centre, go across to the Sydney airport, hop on the plane, and on the plane I'm thinking about the project and thinking, well, the guys weren't necessarily thinking of doing full 360 panoramic work because they thought it was just going to be too hard. And so I was just trying to wrap my head around some way we could make that work, doing some sketches and whatnot. So a day or two later I sent them a sketch. I said, look, I think I've figured out a way we can do it, and we're going to need to do a whole lot of testing, we're going to need a whole lot of equipment and blah blah blah. So they said, great, let's do it. So actually before we get into that bit, I just want to tell you about how they got my number, because they just rang me out of the blue. I did not know them before that. There's a guy called Ben Southall who won the best job in the world a couple of years ago. In Queensland there was that island job where the winner went and spent 6 months, got paid 150 grand to spend six months looking after an island. And it was a pretty cool job. So anyway, he was literally travelling all around the Great Barrier Reef and posting stuff on the web and all sorts of stuff like that. Anyway, so he was doing another project and he was going to be up at Heron Island and all over the reef, and he gave me a call and he said, I wanted to do some panoramic stuff. So I helped him out with that. I gave him some ideas on what he could do. I helped hook him up with a Nikon sponsorship so he could get the gear to do the job, and basically lend him some of my gear. It was not a paid job for me, it was just lending a hand. So that was Ben. He met with those guys on Heron Island, not as a part of the project, but they mentioned this stuff we were doing and he mentioned me. And then the guys, the Seaview guys, again looking for someone who would know a bit about this stuff, came across the Epson Pano Awards online, and they figured, well, thousands of photographers entering images into the Panorama Awards, the guy who runs that would probably know a bit about panorama photographers. So that's David Evans, and I'm one of the judges of the Epson Pano Awards, which is a volunteer type thing, and I've also helped out with a few other bits and pieces. So again, they rang David Evans and said, we're doing this thing, interactive, do you know anyone? And so Dave said, I know a guy who might be able to help you out. So it's just really interesting that two projects that I've helped out on for basically not commercial projects is where the contact came from, that the guys from Seaview rang me. So I'm not saying run out there and do all these projects all the time, but I'm certainly helping people out and putting yourself out there and making yourself available when you know what you're doing is an important thing, and it can reap rewards like it has in this instance. If you consider the amount of work I've had to do a reward. But anyway, testing times. So the guys liked the idea of what we might be able to do, and So within a week, or less than a week, I think it was, we were in a pool in Sydney. You won't have a hard time feeling the testing stuff. So this day was about an 18-hour day of testing, you know, with underwater rigs and dome ports and different lenses and different everything. And it was a big day. So the interesting thing with underwater stuff, I'm not an underwater photographer. Apologies to panorama photographers here who are also underwater guys. I'm not an underwater guy. But in this instance, I didn't need to be, luckily, because the guys, the Seaview guys are underwater guys, and so it was my expertise in figuring stuff out and about panoramic stuff that they were interested in. So when you're testing on land, it's, you know, hard work. You've got to set things up, you've got to shoot, you've got to post-process and whatnot. It's a lot of messing around. But when you're testing stuff underwater, it's a whole order of magnitude more complicated and time-consuming and difficult than testing on land. Because, I mean, when you're testing or when you're doing the proper shooting, absolutely any time you go and do the job that you're doing or the testing, you could destroy all of your equipment. I mean, every single time is a possibility. So far we haven't lost anything, but because of the fact that it's a good possibility it will happen at some stage, you have to have a backup of everything. You have to have two of everything, because the chances are at some point your equipment is going to get flooded and you're going to lose it. So yeah, there's Christoph, the inimitable Christoph, who will not take no for an answer on any given question. Testing the very first rig that we put together to see if it might be possible to produce a camera array that would sit on the front of a sea scooter and all that sort of stuff. So we spent the entire day there. We were not getting good results. We're trying different lenses, trying different dome ports, trying different extensions, and all sorts of stuff, and getting close, but not getting what we wanted or what I wanted in particular. So at the end of the day, or actually past the end of the day, we're shooting, and then I was stitching and messing around with stuff up until midnight or 1 or 2 a.m. And it was only at that sort of time that I realised that the very last things that we'd shot at about 6 o'clock that night, when it was almost dark, had actually worked. And in just a second I'll show you the very first underwater panorama that we did that worked. And it is this one here. Now, anyone who's familiar with my work, I like to think it's pretty good, but this could well be the best panorama I've ever produced. So look at that. Look at that. It's tiles, it's stitching errors, it's a very small nadir to be patched, as you can see there. There's the tripod legs. The nice thing about shooting it in that position, though, is that you don't have anything to patch at the bottom. The bottom's perfect, which is important because we're zooming over the top of coral, so you want the coral to be really good. So anyway, that was at the very end of a very long day of testing, and way into the early hours of the morning, I finally realised, hey, wait a minute, we might have something that works here, and we produced that. So having done that, we then went to the next day. We went to the Sydney Aquarium, and we wanted to do some more real-world testing to see how it might look with sharks. Yeah, that's actually the shark tank at Sydney Aquarium, which is very cool. And there's lots of fish, and it's very pretty. So it was a semi-real environment that we could test in. The couple of things that we were trying to test at this point is an offset rig, like we were looking at in the pool a moment ago, which simulates the camera array on the front of a sea scooter. And in this instance here, this is Christoph with the camera, and this is the other guy here is Richard Vivers, who's the head guy on the project, but obviously subservient to Christoph underwater. I can see you, get out of my way. That's not French, is it? So in this instance, and right at this second, we're testing just a normal panorama rig. So this is the same as a above water rig, but taken underwater. And the reason we needed to test this is that the pilot program, which launched in February, was going to happen before the whole Seaview sea scooter system was built, and we'd be able to shoot that. So we needed to shoot some content to put into the the pilot program, and to do that we just shot normal panoramas. So that's the camera lens, fairly well centered on the nodal point or the NPP point, and you know, spinning it around 3 shots and getting a fairly standard panorama is what's going on there. So after this, after the and the panoramas here, I'll give you a quick look at the panorama in a second when this finishes. I love the sharks coming past, that's very cool. So after the time in the Sydney Aquarium, we shot the panoramas there, again they look good, and then the guys had to head up to Heron Island to shoot some actual content that could be put into the pilot program. So I think we'll end that there. Any gear, of course, that you, that's a Manfrotto spinner there, so obviously the gear doesn't last long when you use it underwater. Does Nodal Ninja gear work underwater?
If you clean it afterwards.
Yeah. I did, yeah.
Well,
So.
before, it's, salt water's killed.
So was that?
Salt water kills everything.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. So,
You have to expect to throw it away.
so that gear, most of that gear is dead now, which you would expect. So the guys went up to Heron, they shot some of that stuff that we looked at a moment ago, and the concept, the design for the actual SV1, which is what we call the scooter system, the underwater scooter SV1, the design for that and the parameters for the positioning and whatnot were finalised, and we sent that over here to Seattle, actually, is a company that builds the sea scooters and engineered the system. So based on our research and our testing and whatnot, all that stuff got sent off, and then we waited until early February when the actual SV1, the first unit, came across back to us in Australia. So there were certainly some nerves, because at this point in time a large amount of money has been spent and we've only been able to test the concept. Like, in theory, this should all work, but until they spend a truckload of money building the system, you never know for sure. So there were some nerves. The guys went, and I wasn't there actually when they went and did the first shoot, and I'm just trying to remember where it was, Sydney, or they might have gone up to Cairns and done some shooting with SV1, sent me the panoramas to stitch, and they didn't work. And I said to the guys, yeah, these panoramas aren't working. So it was a lot of panicky people, but I said the reason they're not working is because there's some design parameters that we've talked about that you need to consider, is that you can't do this and you can't do that, and so go back and shoot them again, but take those design parameters into consideration, and I think we'll be right. Even so, everyone was very concerned at this point, because the project's launching in less than a month. It all needs to work. So anyway, they go back, they shoot some stuff again using the design parameters that had been set up for, and it was perfect. So SV1 worked, and we were able to do the launch on the 23rd of February, which was 3 months after I got that phone call while shooting at that church. 3 months later, the project launches, and we've got the pilot program launched, as I said, and we've got the SV1 sea scooter system built and tested, and to some degree, and working. So the program launched, and we looked at that. So the pilot program launched, and we looked at that a minute ago, which was panoramas not found. So this is what launched on the 23rd of February. Looks like we've lost all hope of internet. That's all right. We've seen that.
Yeah, but I want to get you on this system.
Sorry, what's
I
that?
want to get you on the system so you can show that.
Oh, okay.
Just that wash your Wi-Fi.
Okay, let's just read about some fresh Nikon D400 roommates.
Yeah.
Interesting. Who has a D800 here? 1, 2, 3. Is that 3? 4. So it's 4 people have won the lottery. Well done, people. They are an insane camera. I cannot get enough of it. Okay, come on. Not yet, but it hasn't been underwater, and it's my personal camera, so it won't be going underwater.
What cameras are you using?
At the moment we're using, what's going on here? Sorry, at the moment we're using, I'll just refresh, Canon 5D Mark IIs. We're hoping to move on to D800s, and we're speaking with Nikon in Australia, but there are some issues that mean that we may not be able to do that, and we may have to stick with the Canon gear. Okay, so this is on the 23rd of Feb, this is the project, this is the pilot program which launched, which was the work the guys shot, not with the whole sea scooter system, but just with the tripod, individual positions. around Heron Island, just here. So again, beautiful stuff. I mean, it's literally, it's the same as shooting on land, but shooting underwater. You know, the same setup, camera horizontally, few shots around, and get some beautiful imagery. And I like the half and half stuff, where you're half in the water and half out. That's very cool. And so again, at low tide, you can actually, this structure here, you can see, at low tide, you can walk across to the shipwreck, which is where it is over there. So yeah, and it's all coral all around the place outside of the channel. So that's that. It's just, this is really important. Then we go back and check out. Look at that, that's Sydney. That's the Sydney Convention Centre. That's where I met the guys, and we had a meeting while I was trying to shoot these panoramas and whatnot. So very pretty. But anyway, that's not the point. Thank you very much for the internet connection there, so we can see that. So 3 months later, that launched. It launched at the World Ocean Summit in Singapore, and they had a model of another unit that we're working on, SV2 there, and also Google had set up a, let's get out of there. Google had set up a Liquid Galaxy, which is their system where they have multiple vertically orientated screens, and they usually run Google Earth on it. Yes, Google Earth. Yes, and sorry, and but we'd set it up so it could run a little bit of Seaview content. So I didn't know much about this, but I just on YouTube found this video of it. So I thought, oh, a quick squiz at that. So this wasn't shot by us or anyone. This was, as I said, just someone had shot this and showed up on YouTube. So that's obviously that same panorama again. Color's not good off that, whatever camera is being used. But yeah, set up on their Liquid Galaxy system, which is really cool. And then in half a second you'll see Richard Vivas, who's the head guy at Underwater Earth, the main man who brought the whole project together. And behind him is a model of SV2, which is quite dramatically different from what SV2 is looking like these days. So after the launch, when the pilot program launched, there was about 300,000 panorama views on that in the first day. There we go. Hello, Richard. Look at that, scripted and everything. Project launched, lots of people checked it out, got quite a lot of press, didn't get as many views as what you'd expect considering how much press it got, but it got all sorts of crazy things like people doing reviews of the system.
Nowadays we can use Google Street View to walk down streets in Amsterdam to Arkansas without a second thought, at least virtually. But through some pretty amazing strategic partnerships, Google is now going to be bringing nature to us as well. Google is partnering with the University of Queensland's Global Change Institute, a not-for-profit organization called Underwater Earth, and an insurance company called Catlin to bring Google Street View to the world's largest reef, the Great Barrier Reef. These organizations have worked together to develop an underwater camera that's actually also kind of a submersible vehicle, and will be taking thousands of 360-degree panoramas of the Great Barrier Reef. Stitching these together along with some GPS data will allow anyone with an internet connection to basically go take a dip in the Great Barrier Reef. So basically I feel the way about this project that the eHarmony cat lady feels about cats. It a little bit makes me want to cry. I mean, I am probably never going to get anywhere near the Great Barrier Reef. In all likeliness, neither are you, and that's just a fact of life. The world is big and we can't go everywhere. But now you and I, if you're not one of the lucky ones, will be able to at least get a glimpse of what it's like to be submerged among what is, in actuality, the world's largest structure made by living things. That's right, we do not hold that title. Coral holds that title.
Okay. So there's also, you see all sorts of crazy videos reviewing the stuff that you've done, which is fun after the fact. Project launch, there's about 300,000 panorama views on the first day. There's been a couple of million since then, and that's all good. It's a pilot program. When the real project kicks off later in the year and eventually gets back online, I think it'll go a lot bigger than that. So back to where we're at now. In May of this year, start of May, about a month ago, all of us went up to Heron Island, and we took SV1, and we needed to figure out the workflow. Like, how do we make this thing work to be able to shoot something like 50,000 panoramas by the end of the year, starting in September, and all the stuff we wanted to do. So it's interesting when you're building. When you're putting this stuff together, like every little tiny thing needs to be considered. Like, how do you move the sea scooter from the lab to the beach? Oh, well, you need to build a special trolley to hold it. How do you do every little tiny thing? This is actually a wet lab in the University of Queensland Research Station on Heron Island, which they gave us the use of, which was fantastic. And so, yeah, we were there for a week working crazy hours, like 12, 14 hour short days and 18, 20 hour long days, just to get it all figured out. So what we're looking at now is just the process of getting the unit from, again, that's my man Christoph, getting the unit from wherever it happens to be down to the water. Now, there's so much stuff we had to test. There was moving it around, there was setting it up in the mornings to get it ready to shoot. You know, there's a lot of different electronic devices that need power. There's obviously memory cards. There's the students. I mean, what a place to be a student on Heron Island. That's just amazing. Anyway, you know, everything needs to be powered. Everything. There's so many different connections and whatnot. And the first few days, every single morning when we set up, there was a problem with something, and so just huge amounts of testing and retesting and figuring stuff out. How do you launch from the beach? How do you recover to the beach? How do you launch from the beach to a boat? How do you launch from the boat into the water? How do you recover from the water back into the boat? Just a huge amount of stuff needs to be figured out. So as I said, we were there just non-stop working on this. This is me doing the video too. It's pretty dodgy. My apologies for that. It's pretty wonky, but I just put this together the other day just from stuff I was shooting while I was hanging about. So after you've fixed and got the sea scooter together, there's, you know, a huge amount of work to do there. Then you have to prepare yourself. Obviously the guys need their wetsuits on, they need all their equipment, and there's a whole lot of serious stuff apart from all the photographic things that they need to think about, because if they mess it up, seriously, someone could be in real problems. And this guy in the red, he's one of the lead scientists. He's from the Netherlands, working on Heron Island, and this is Richard explaining how you jump out of the water with a sea scooter, and this is him doing his impression of that, I think. Yeah, there we go. And so a bit of time for messing around. So a lot of serious stuff needs to happen, and everything takes so long to get done. So getting into the water, we missed the part that there's a sea scooter in the water. It's zero buoyancy, so it just sits neutrally wherever it happens to be. This is, if you're going to launch from a boat, obviously you need to get all the gear across to the boat first, and then bring the trolley out and winch the sea scooter on, making sure none of the because you can see one of the domes at the bottom there is facing straight down, so you've got to make sure it's on the bracket so it doesn't touch the boat, and then everything's got to go in a certain place so it doesn't get ruined. And so they were out in some rough weather a few times, and it all worked well, but just it is amazing. None of us, we knew it would be a lot of work, but none of us considered truly how much work we involved in having to figure out every little tiny detail of everything that has to happen to be able to put this together and go out, shoot panoramas, and then come back. The guys going out, so they'd go out for a couple of hours, they'd shoot for about an hour, and then they'd come back, get the rig sorted out, get it off the boat, get it back into the trolley. They had to deal with, well, these sharks aren't dangerous, but they're always floating around. That's at the same area, which is very cool. Just here, there's about 10 of them, 10 or 11 just swimming around. That's that, we're looking underwater a moment ago, that's that structure you can walk out to. And so once all of that's done, then the unit has to come back into the wet lab, and then you have to obviously clean it, and you need to pull all the batteries of everything out, and all of the memory cards, and and it goes on and on and on. So he has a phenomenal process. It was fantastic, and as much as that's hard work, if you're going to be doing hard work like that, then you might as well be doing it somewhere nice, like this. So that's Heron Island, a wonky pole shot that is, but That's with a D800 with a 10.5, 4 shots. So yeah, if you are going to have to do crazy amounts of work, you might as well do them at a spot like that. As usual, I'm actually almost holding up the boat there because we're going back, and I just want to shoot some pole shots. So everyone's on the boat, they're loaded, and they're leaving. Okay, so that was Heron Island, and that was just last month. So that's pretty much where we are up to. We shot on Heron Island. We also shot on Lady Elliot Island, which is... Actually, I didn't go to Lady Elliot, just the guys did. Lady Elliot Island is a couple of 100 kilometres south of Heron, and it's the southernmost island on the Great Barrier Reef, and it's about the clearest waters on the Great Barrier Reef. So it's also known for manta rays, huge amounts of manta rays and turtles and whatnot off Lady Elliot Island. So after we were at Heron, the guys went across to Lady Elliot and shot some content, which I am about to show you. Just if we can not shoot this stuff, it hasn't been publicly released. It's not available for anyone to look at apart from people in this room. So yeah, just if anyone comes through to PT GUI, stitches them, sends them back to Photoshop, it does some more work on them, then sends them out to Panda VR, and then Panda VR outputs all the files that are needed. So it's not an off-the-shelf system, it's all custom. It's using off-the-shelf software, but it's a custom-built system that's stitching all together. Questions? Any questions?
The GPS, is it accurate enough to find the real place, because normal GPS is like 5 meters?
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, GPS doesn't work underwater. Like literally, if you're that far underwater, the GPS signals don't penetrate. So what we've got is on the sea scooter, there's a buoy that's on the surface on a line, and that buoy has GPS and it's recording, and it's just synced time with the camera equipment. So it's not going to be accurate to the millimeter, but you still, with the number of shots we're taking every 4 or 5 seconds, you can figure out where you are in relation to the GPS setting. So it's not like one shot here and then one shot, you know, a kilometre away. It's a shot every 5 or 6 meters. So you're right, the accuracy is not going to be that exact point, but you're going to be able to get pretty close to it. Yeah.
Aaron, you had talked about in your testing early testing size parameter limitations, which granted what they were out shooting.
Yeah.
It's more important when you correctly do their shooting process. What were
the design, if anyone couldn't hear, Scott was wondering about the design parameters that caused the first shoot with SB1 not to work. It's mainly to do with how close they were to things, because the rig is using cameras that are offset. Exactly, you've got quite a large error when you're close to the camera. So the error is not critical underwater because there's no straight lines. It's a non-built environment. So you can just think that generally still stitch okay, but they were like, you know, this far away. So the camera facing down was not even looking at the same thing as the camera facing to the side, and so that was the problem. So it was too close, they were moving too fast, so things were blurred because they were close to things that were moving quickly. There's a few other minor things like that. And so, yeah, well, I'm asking the guys to try and stay a metre away from stuff. Yeah, I mean, you can still see errors here and there because when your cameras are offset, you can get it perfectly accurate, but only in a single plane. So at 2 meters, it's perfect, but at 3 meters, there's going to be a stitching error. So it's just that constant issue of what are they shooting, how far away, you know, what sort of device they're moving through. So yeah, it's not, because there's 2 aspects. I'll just explain that briefly. There's 2 aspects, or there's multiple aspects, but 2 of the aspects to the project is a scientific aspect, and the scientific aspect's not using. They're using this stuff to look at because they love it. I think it's fantastic, but they're not using it for scientific measurement and whatnot because it's not, with those stitching errors, it's not that accurate enough for scientific purposes. But they are using these still images because they can still use those, and they're also attaching other equipment to the sea scooter that's doing other measurements as well. So yeah.
And are you synchronizing your camera and exposure settings manually?
Yes. Yeah. Everything's all manual set. Yeah, that's right. There's.
And there were a number of monitors.
Yes.
Are you looking at that?
Exactly. So that's HDMI output. So Christoph at the back, he can see. It's not doing live view, but each time a shot is taken, he can see what's happening, just to see what happens in light change. I mean, Heron, the test last month in Heron, apart from all the physical things we're testing, for me it was a chance to see what do we get. You know, shoot for hours or shoot. I shot like 3,000 panoramas, and I'm getting to see what's it like. You know, and when you're this depth, when you're at that depth, you know, there's 1,000 parameters that are being figured out.
When you're, because of the sheer volume of data at 5 seconds a shot or whatever,
Yep.
Are you processing out there? Like you're going out to Parent Island and setting up a system, or are you having it sent back to you? And
Yeah, well, because this was just testing, so this is not real content yet. But when they're on the boat at the real project in September, we're not going to be set up on the boat to do that processing. So they're going to be sending the content back to me for processing, I think. There's still a lot of stuff to work out. Yeah, no lights attached, so it's all natural. Yeah, so 12 metre maximum. Yeah. There's different aspects to the cabin CV survey where there is a deep or a deeper down to 100 metres, which is not this panoramic stuff, but we did figure that we could attach lights along the body in between the cameras, and still they wouldn't be seen by the cameras. Again, it's just another million hours of testing to see whether that would work. It's not a million, it's a billion. But anyway.
I'm still unsure, but how this will create all these wonderful images.
Yes.
How are we going to say what? How are they going to come on, Aaron, get right on this.
What's the point of it?
Product.
Yeah. Well, there's multiple aims of the project. There's a scientific survey where the guys are studying the coral, the effects of all sorts of stuff going on in the coral, which is not necessarily these images, but some of it will be the images. And then there's a public awareness of underwater environments. So by using all of this content, they can increase public awareness, which public can increase pressure on governments to give more protections to underwater environments is part of that. So, yeah, we'll see. Apart from that, it's just fun.
Hi, Aaron. Have you settled on a pixel count with the acquisition? Is there any topic for underwater?
Well, no. I mean, we're just using whatever the maximum we can get from a given set of equipment is, and at the moment these are around 10,000 pixel Equirex. If we could use the D800s, they would be more like 12,500 pixel, which would be good, and the D800's got a much better dynamic range, which would also be helpful in some of these dark environments. But at the moment, we're with the Canon gear. Yeah.
With the sea scooter weight?
The whole thing, or just the scooter?
Well, the look like a little submarine.
Yeah, just the sea scooter on its own. Like you pick them up, they're handholdable. Just the sea scooter on its own, they're like 20 or 30 kilos, something like that. The whole thing takes like 2 or 3 people to carry at the moment. SV2 is going to be cut down and smaller and lighter, but yeah, so it's pretty heavy, but it's not break your back heavy. With once it can be broken down into a few different parts. Yeah.
There's 3 cameras?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So SV2 is 3 separate cameras. Sorry, SV1 and SV2, yeah, 3 separate cameras in an array. Yeah.
why not switching to video?
It's a good question. In our list of things we'd like to do, 360 video is on that list, but with the different hardware we're looking at, the different main goals of the program, 360 video, in some of the cameras we were testing and considering, we could have done 360 video, but ultimately those cameras weren't going to allow us to do some other aspect of the project that was more critical, so we had to go without the 360 because obviously 3 5D Mark IIs won't do video. There's not enough overlap. So we're looking at 3 Sony NEX5Ns with the Samyang 7.5mm, and that will do video as well as stills, but there's other issues of things that it couldn't do. So it's just a trade-off. It's not to say that there won't be video at some point, because SV1 was built and done, and SV2, even before we started the project, is being built as we speak, and I suspect there'll be more gear coming along as time goes on. So yeah.
How many of these rigs are going to be built for the actual survey?
For the survey there will be 2, and in the future there may be a lot.
So there'll be two, but then you'll have two more as backups in case something happens?
No, so there'll be two as in one with a backup. So the actual camera array, there'll be two of those, and they could be attached to. And obviously we've got quite a few scooters to play with. So there's just one plus a backup for the in September, and in the future there'll be probably more. But that's all. There's a lot of stuff that's still to be determined in terms of the future stuff.
Are you going to make it fly?
Yes. It'll be good. No. Is it a serious question? I mean, there's talk of other stuff, but yeah, no. I'll give you a serious answer.
I assume you stitch all of this stuff on a template.
Yes, exactly.
How did you develop the calibration of the rig for that template? I mean, where did you get the numbers for that? How did you get the numbers for that template?
Yeah, well, the numbers are pretty well the same as land-based numbers, because even though the equipment is in underwater rig and the dome and whatnot, it doesn't change a lot of those parameters. But like with my land-based stuff, a lot of the stitching is based on shooting certain environments and then using those environments to create templates. So it's not too well. It's a lot more difficult than land-based stuff, but it's a similar process, if that makes sense.
So this.
Yep.
You did a lot of offset stitching before you ever built one of these underwater cameras.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like the pool shot, for example, where they've got a really good environment to be able to create templates and all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
What do you do with nodular area?
In this case here, I've just manually filled it in. There's the big triangle, which I think you can see it's a pretty dodgy job there. This is just done quickly, but again, there's the project. The project is very much in the middle, and there's so many things that we could do this, we could do that, and we're talking to all different partners. The concept at the moment is that we'll probably use a patch, and that patch will have a lot of the data, because we're collecting not just GPS data, we're collecting depth, temperature, we're collecting attitude data for the actual sea scooter and things like that. So some of that data can come in potentially and form a patch, which is a bit ugly, but potentially useful. There's different players, some with scientific use and some with the general public, and it's still being figured out. But these ones are manually patched. We can auto patch them to some degree, or we could, like we're doing here, this is manually, but we could automate that to some degree, or we can actually cover it. So it's still up in the air. Yeah. The interesting thing, the other interesting thing is the still photos that we can get from the process. Are just gorgeous. That's not. And we found another. Because we've got a sea scooter with a panorama array attached to the front, we actually follow along beside creatures and shoot them as they're moving, which is what's happening here, which again is, very, very cool, and results in some really interesting images that otherwise would be probably almost impossible to get, because you can't shoot sideways while you're zooming along next to a creature, generally speaking. Yeah. More questions?
Did you think about doing object VR? Because in some ways, I mean, when you look at the methods,
yes, as an object. The part of the scientific program is they've got multiple cameras attached to the bottom of the rig, and they're shooting stereo imaging of the sea floor. And with that stereo imaging, they can then create 3D models of the sea floor that the SV1 goes over the top of. Not quite object VR, but getting into that realm of collecting different types of data. But yeah, we haven't really looked at object VR from my point of view, or from the visual point of view. It's more the science guys working on that stuff. Yeah. Questions? We all done?
What are your shutter speeds and what are your exposure considerations?
Generally, we want to be 250 or higher because we're moving, and not moving very fast, only a couple of kilometres an hour, but even so, we're usually quite close to things, so subject movement or camera movement is a problem. So 250 per second, and really we're just adjusting film ISO. So they ranged from, when you're in shallow water and it's bright, 160, to when you're in a bit deep water and it's not so bright, 1600. So, and those shots in the panorama that I showed in the Sydney Aquarium was 3200, because that's quite dark. So, yeah, on these coral islands, I mean, coral only grows in shallow water, so it's generally going to be quite bright, as long as it's a bright day. Okay.